This is Awkward Occurrence or Awkward Entertainment. So let me get right into this. We're going to be recapping Mr. Chad Daybell's preliminary hearing. And I wrote some notes down during watching it, which was yesterday, I believe. And just the notes pertain to things I found interesting. So let's just jump right into this. It was funny. The hearing was funny to me. It was comical. It was entertaining. It was predictable. Like a lot of scripts are predictable if you keep watching the same type of movies over and over. But let's continue. Mr. Chad Daybell, Gibbs, and Mr. Warwick, who were lovers at one point in this story, asked them a bunch of questions about their beliefs and their connection to Chad. So, what did I write down? Now, the lawyer asked, was it Warwick? This is either or. About King Noah. The lawyer asked about King Noah. King Noah is a part of LDS, which is the religious set or group Chad and Lori belongs to. Trust LDS is, of course, their church. Prophet Elmer is a prophet that left, I guess, King Noah because LDS believe in adultery, all this other stuff. Charles Vallow not picking up JJ Vallow after moving out. I wrote that down because nobody picked up JJ, not the grandparents, not Charles. They just left him with crazy Lori Vallow. Now, Mr. Warwick. This is Mr. Warwick, the hard at hearing man. Very hard at hearing. Along with his lover, or ex-lover, Mr. Gibbs, who had problems hearing on the stand, too. And if you rewatch the video, Mr. Chad Daybell, lawyer, kind of insinuates Gibbs and Warwick are intentionally acting like they can't hear what he's saying, I guess to throw off the courts or to throw off their answers. Okay, Mr. Warwick visited Lori Daybell and Chad Daybell back in September. They did an In a Day podcast. He ended up spending the night at Lori's house with Melanie. Warwick last saw JJ when Alice brought JJ back from his house because Alice was babysitting JJ while they were doing a podcast while Lori, Chad, and Mr. Warwick were doing a podcast. Warwick stayed at the house. He was in JJ's bedroom. Melanie stayed at the house. She was in Tolly's room. This is when the judge asked Mr. Warwick if he had hearing problems, because it was just not a coincidence, I guess. It was just funny how Mr. Gibbs, Melanie, came to the stand and act like she couldn't hear either. We'll probably go look at that video in a little bit, or parts of it. Now, this is my own personal thought. Laura thinks Warwick and Melanie are playing games with hearing situation. And I would say go back and look at Melanie's testimony to Warwick's testimony up to the lawyer questioning Warwick about Melanie's hearing problem. So, Warwick was asked by Chad Daybell's lawyer, do you know if Melanie also has hard at hearing problems? Because it just sounds like both of you have hard at hearing problems. The lawyer also asked, did you have any problems hearing when you were at Lori's house? And Mr. Ward was like, whoa, what? No, what? It's strange. Yep, I believe it was they met at preparedness camps. Ward and Chad did. Also, they went to preparedness camps together or met. Or they went to the same preparedness camp, different dates. He asked about books. If he read any of a Chad Daybell books. Well, you can just finish reading this. Warwick Yeah, Ward made a strange statement. He met Alex Cox after he dropped off JJ. Then he says Alex wasn't taking anything serious. What did that mean? What do you mean he wasn't taking anything serious? You just met the man. Well, what was he not taking serious? I mean, y'all was just getting back from a podcast. He was babysitting. He came and said hello, I guess. I don't understand what he wasn't taking serious. So that's a hint that Mr. Ward wasn't very fond of Alex. Or maybe Ward and Alex knew more than we think they know. Or they know more than we think they know about what's going on with the 2 dead children. Yeah, Warwick has more hearing problems. They had to bring Mr. Warwick a hearing aid or headphones. Let's see. So Cox wasn't taking anything serious. Warwick has more hearing problems, and a lawyer addresses it on the stand. They asked, did you have any hearing problems at Lori Vallow's house? Okay. Mr. Warwick, or who was it, Warwick, also stated, or the lawyer stated, JJ loved Alice, that JJ had a hard time bonding with other males, but he didn't have a hard time bonding with Alex. There was a bunch of objections from prosecution due to relevance of the questioning by Chad's lawyer. The Chad's lawyer asked about their religious beliefs, asked about the relationship between Melanie and Tylee. That's a jailhouse phone call. Let's get into that. Let's just get into what video I have. We'll start with Melanie Gibbs, and I just edited any part of the video. I didn't pick a part to edit it. I just edited a random part just to have video.
Friendship?
Yes.
Would you describe, obviously I heard some of your testimony on that tape, but from that time in October until, maybe the beginning of last year, you had a very close friendship. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Sisters?
Possibly.
If they had a close sister-like relationship.
Were you that close?
We were close.
Okay. You shared a number of things.
Yes.
You shared your belief about having visions about things that may. Okay. Okay. Are you?
I'm not in disbelief.
Can you tell me how many times you spoke with the Gilbert Police Department?
Oh, multiple times.
Time you spoke with the Gilbert Police Department?
I believe it was December. I'm sorry, in person or on phone?
On the phone?
On phone. I believe it was December 7th or 8th.
Him and call him?
In November. Yes.
Okay. And then in November, you didn't call him back right away, is that correct?
Correct.
And then at some point, you did have...
What's the point of her being behind glass if she has no mask on? You know it's nonsense. It don't make sense. Don't make sense. Why are you behind glass and you don't have a mask on? So if you do sneeze, the next person that walks in there may catch this magical virus. Like come on, guys, come on.
Contact with him. Did you initiate the contact, or did Officer Gilbert initiate the contact?
Well, he first initiated it, and then I secondly initiated it.
So you called him back
Correct.
sometime after he had called you, correct?
That's correct.
How much time passed between when he left the message and when you got back to him?
Maybe that's a normal design, but let's continue.
I would say within an hour, possibly.
Okay. Whereabouts of JJ, is that right?
Correct.
And at that point, you had advised him that you had JJ in your care, correct?
I told him that I had him, and then I didn't have him.
Okay. So the initial time that you told him that you had JJ, that was not a truthful statement to Officer Pillar, was it?
And I don't remember what she said on that. Well, let's continue. Mr. Warwick, you are up.
Mr. Warwick, have you ever met Tylee Ryan?
No.
Have you met J.J. Vallow?
Yes.
When did you meet J.J. Vallow?
I met J.J. Vallow on September 21st, 2019.
Where was that?
That was at her town, Lori's town home in Rexburg.
Okay. Why were you there?
I was invited, I was coming up for a conference, and I was invited to stay there instead of renting a hotel room. And so that's why I was there.
Okay. When did you arrive there?
I arrived Friday night about 7:30.
Conference, correct?
Yes.
While you were there, how often did you see Chad Daybell?
At the condo or over the weekend?
Over the weekend.
3 times that I can recall.
Okay. How many times did you see him in Lori's home?
Mr. Warwick,
And this is when they bring him the headset, because previously the lawyers and prosecution had to keep repeating themselves. So they brought it upon themselves to bring him a headset so he can hear better.
we have a listening device here. I can tell that maybe you're a little bit hard of hearing.
Yeah, I am.
We appreciate you being here. We want to accommodate you. Do you mind if we try this hearing device to see if it's a little bit easier for you to hear?
Yes, that'd be great.
All right.
You gotta have some type of theatrics on TV court. You gotta write in some type of theatrics.
Like one like that.
There go the parents in the background that never came back for the JJ.
Okay.
Mr. Warwick, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Is that better?
About the same.
All right. Well, let's experiment with it a little bit here. If it's not better, you're welcome to take it off. I want to do all that I can to make sure that you can hear me, hear Mr. Wood, and hear Mr.
Did you see the defendant Chad Daybell at Lori's house?
Once.
Okay. When was that?
Not just asking him, did he see Chad? I believe that was the night of the podcast and him coming to Lloyd's house. And that's when he met Alex and met JJ, but JJ was asleep. Now, what else was strange about this? There was the jailhouse phone call where they were talking about scripture and adultery and murder and how crazy the religion is. There was also, was it Warwick, who said Alex took JJ? Well, JJ was climbing up on the counters. He smashed a Jesus cross or a Jesus picture. he was acting wild, according to the claim by Ward from Lori. And let's get into this video. This is going to be the same video, but longer. I want to find the part where the lawyer tells Warwick, or asks Warwick, do you have a hearing problem like your girlfriend does?
And argumentative.
Sustained on the argumentative. Mr. Pryor, if you'll divide your...
This is when you hear sustain, right? So this is part of the objections, a bunch of objections in court. This lawyer trying to figure out what the heck everything means.
questions so that we can get one answer per question.
You testified that sometime in 2020 you spoke with the FBI. Did you speak to him in August of 2020?
I can't recall.
Okay.
August? That would be this month.
That would be.
And she doesn't recall because she states she only spoke with the FBI over the phone. She doesn't remember what month. Let's listen in for a couple more seconds, then I'm going to fast forward to the parts I'm looking for.
So that's why I'm trying to wonder whether or not you can't recall because there's...
I didn't know. I didn't speak to anybody in August.
Okay, did you speak to anybody in July of 2020? June of 2020, did you speak to the FBI?
Probably not, but I can't recall.
Okay. Did you speak to the FBI in May of 2020?
I can't recall.
Do you have any recollection? You remember the date?
I did.
Okay. Were you prompted by law enforcement to make that phone call?
Nope.
You did that on your own?
Yep.
And the questions you asked were questions that you planned to have?
Mr. Pryor?
Well, there have been at least 4 or 5 test discussions with Officer Pillar, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
Officer Pillar, how many times have you spoken?
Your Honor, I misunderstood his question. Never mind.
Okay.
I'll withdraw my objection.
Okay.
Mr. Pryor, please proceed.
You've had numerous discussions with law enforcement officers, is that correct?
Yes. If you could speak a little closer to your mic.
Okay, I will. Other than Officer Hermosillo and Officer Ball and Officer Pillar from the Gilbert Police Department, have you spoken to anybody with the FBI?
Yes.
And how many times did you speak with the FBI?
Maybe 2 or 3 times.
When were those, ma'am?
Oh.
And what time did that end?
I don't recall.
Was it a long visit?
I would say an hour-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, they took a couple of breaks. They had to take a break because the audio on the phone call was messing up. The audio on the secret recorded phone call was messing up, so they took another 5-minute break after they just took a 5-minute break.
See Tiley at all, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, on the Sunday, the 22nd, did David and Chad go to deal with some real estate matters together?
I did as well. And so Alex was there too.
Oh, that was news to me. I wasn't aware you went as well. We're well in the LDS religion at that time during that meeting as well, correct?
Correct.
And she shared the same beliefs that you share in terms of the religion, is that correct?
Correct.
And Chad shared the same religious beliefs as part of the LDS church as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So all of you, David, yourself, Lori, and Chad all share the same...
David will be Mr. Warwick, picture on the left-hand corner. So they all shared the same belief, all had this sleepover September 22nd. Somehow the police find the kids in Chad's backyard. I don't know who told on who. I don't understand. I didn't understand this episode. Where was the lawyer going with the defense? Like, I don't understand where you're going with the defense. If you're trying to implicate Mr. Gibbs or Miss Gibbs or Warwick, or if you try to dig too deep into Mr. Gibbs or Warwick whereabouts, you're kind of going to throw your own client under the bus. It's in this little script. It just seems like Chad, David Warwick, Melanie Gibbs, and Lori Vallow are all the main suspects. But the only two in jail, not for murder though, are Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Consistent with your LDS beliefs, is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because Melanie Gibbs, oh, I believe in the same thing Chad does. David Warwick, oh, I believe in the same thing Chad does. Lori believes in the same thing. Chad believes in his own cuckoo stuff. Kids are dead. We got these 4 people who had a sleepover September 22nd, Sunday. I don't see how these people aren't connected, and I don't see, this lawyer, I guess, needs to use these witnesses to his advantage for Chad's sake.
You got up in the morning on the 23rd?
Sometime.
Do you recall about what time, ma'am?
I don't.
Okay. But you do recall that JJ wasn't there?
Correct.
Well, if you didn't know he slept there when you were doing your podcast, how did you know he was there? Wasn't there?
As I said, I don't recall seeing him. I never recall seeing him.
Oh, so he may have been there.
I didn't see him.
Okay, but he may have been there or he may not have been there. Would that be a fair statement?
Sure.
Well, I don't need sure. Is that a fair statement or is it an unfair statement?
It could be fair.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, it could be fair. Let's just look at her acting. Like, she makes herself seem suspicious. They also state she told the police JJ was with her and she wasn't. She lied about that. She had some strange acting. I know it's acting, but she had some strange acting.
Did Lori rely on Alex for babysitting?
Well, her character in this show is strange. Let me put it that way. Her character is strange, especially in this episode when she's on the stand and giving accounts of events. Just the way she stops and thinks and words things. Just the nervousness I get from her character. Or I'm trying to hide something I get from her character.
Sometimes. I don't believe all of the time. I wouldn't know all her babysitting moments.
And up until the time that Lori moved here around September 1st, Mr. Daybell wasn't a regular visitor with Lori Daybell prior to September 1st. Would that be fair?
Calls for facts outside of evidence.
Will you please repeat the question, Mr. Pryor?
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Daybell was not a regular visitor with Lori Vallow until she moved here on September 1st? Would that be fair?
Would it be fair that who is not a regular visitor?
Would it be fair that Mr. Daybell was not a regular visitor with Miss Vallow until after she moved here on September 1st, ma'am?
Mr. Wood, your objection?
I'll withdraw the objection.
Okay. Ms. Gibb, if you know the answer to that question, you can answer it.
I know, according to knowledge from what Lori shared, that they visited often.
Oh, they did. Was that prior to September 1st?
Yes.
Oh, so he would go to where was Lori living?
She lived multiple places.
Well, let's talk about that. Where was she living prior to September 1st?
She was living in Chandler, Arizona.
Okay, did she move somewhere else prior to Chandler?
Yes.
Where she live?
She lived in Texas. I'm sorry. Yes, Texas.
Do you have a recollection of when she lived in Texas?
Okay, the good stuff don't start to the first day of the actual trial. By actual trial, I mean when they get to talking about him dismembering bodies or covering up evidence. He's not charged with murder, but the very small charges they have on him, that's when the action starts, when they start talking about the charges.
I'm not sure exactly the months.
I don't get I don't get how this relates to his charges. I mean, I guess you need background, preliminary. I guess you need background on all the characters. You need to set a scene. But, you're not looking at a murder charge. You're looking at, concealing or tampering with evidence. Maybe child endangerment. But I guess preliminaries, we need to talk to the characters, ask about relationships, religions, beliefs, whereabouts, relationships. I don't think Mr. Melanie was very fond of Tally.
But I want to say somewhere between like April or May or...
Let's fast
Being able
forward.
to inquire, the tape was played, it was presented as evidence, and I think I even...
That's a phone call.
We want to make sure that the testimony and
I believe
more than 3 or 4 times, Judge.
more than 3 or 4 times. Mr. Wood, your objection?
that's testimonial.
There was no direct examination of this witness about an auditory disorder of Ms. Gibbs, so I will sustain the objection.
So that's the part, auditory, Mr. Gibbs. That's when they're talking about. That's when this lawyer asked Mr. Warwick, do you know if Melanie Gibbs is hard of hearing like you are? I can't pinpoint the timestamp.
You're aware of, at some point, over the weekend, who was, this is a 3-bedroom townhome, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, Miss Vallow was staying in one room, right?
Yes.
And you were staying in another room, correct?
Yes.
Was anybody else staying in any of the other rooms?
Yes.
Who?
Melanie.
And whose room was she staying in?
Tidings.
Okay. And you were staying in whose?
JJ's.
Okay. Are you aware of whether or not your girlfriend has any kind of an auditory disorder or been diagnosed?
This right here is what I said in the beginning. I believe the lawyer thinks David Warwick and Melanie Gibbs are intentionally acting hard of hearing to avoid answering questions, to avoid getting the answers right, as a tactic, trying to hide something. It was just strange for the lawyer to ask about Melanie's hearing problem, or if she has a hearing problem.
Please repeat.
Are you aware of whether or not your girlfriend has any kind of an auditory or hearing disorder of any kind?
Objection beyond the scope, relevance.
Mr. Pryor?
Judge, it goes to perception of whether or not either of them can hear properly. I think it's proper examination. Miss Gibbs had testified a certain way, and I want this witness to confirm that. And I think I'm I think I'm perfectly within my right to inquire about that.
With the objection beyond the scope, there was no direct examination of this witness about an auditory disorder of Ms. Gibbs, so I will sustain the objection.
You're aware of Mr. Daybell's writings, is that correct?
Please.
You're familiar with Mr. Daybell's writings, is that correct?
Objection beyond the scope. We never asked that. Or anything about that.
Sustained.
Judge, if I may, there was some inquiry about him having familiarity and knowing Mr. Daybell for 5 years. I think I ought to be able to inquire as to what is the extent and his understanding of that relationship that he claims he has had with Mr. Daybell for 5 years. So I would ask the court to, respectfully, I would ask the court to reconsider its ruling.
Mr. Wood, I'll let you respond to that. That is true. There was questioning about the relationship between Mr. Warwick and Mr. Daybell.
If he wants to ask about the relationship, I think that's fine. We did ask about that. We didn't ask anything about Mr. Daybell's books or his writings.
Mr. Pryor, I will allow you to ask questions about the relationship.
Okay, and Mr. Warwick, the nature of the relationship is that the two of you would go...
You didn't ask Warwick anything about Daybell's writing no books. Why not? Again, he's not going... Mr. Daybell's not going on trial for murder. He's going on trial for covering up murder. So... I get the line of questioning in a preliminary hearing, then again, I don't get it. I guess I get it. Why wouldn't you ask about the writings?
Go to preparedness camps, is that correct?
We've been to preparedness camps, but not together.
Okay. And both of you share a faith in the LDS religion, is that correct?
Yes.
As well as your girlfriend and Miss Vallow also are active and share the faith in the LDS religion, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're familiar with Mr. Daybell because as part of these seminars and places you visit over the years, one of them is Mr. Daybell as being an author of fiction books, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're familiar with Mr. Daybell's writings and his fiction writings, is that correct?
Not the fiction. I did not read any fiction books.
Correct?
Correct.
And your testimony was that JJ was not there during the podcast, correct?
Correct.
Did you see him later that night?
Yes.
When?
When Alex brought him home to put him to bed.
Okay.
Well, because that did bring up an issue in terms of that, because that's inconsistent with what I recall him previously testifying that he didn't see J.J. Vallow. So I think I ought to be given a leeway for at least one very simple question, Judge.
I'll allow that. Mr. Wood, if you want to follow up, if there's a new issue that's raised from the question, I'll allow that as well. Go ahead, Mr. Pryor.
When Alex Cox brought J.J. home that evening, and we're not sure about what time that was, but where did he put J.J. to bed?
Where did he put JJ to bed?
Where did he put J.J. to go to sleep? Where did he
In Laurie's room.
In Laurie's room, okay. All right, thank you, Judge. That's all I have.
Mr. Wood?
Nothing further.
Mr. Warwick, you may be excused from the witness stand. Thank you for being here. May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Warwick.
We'll take a moment and clean the witness cubicle.
To your knowledge, Lieutenant, that call, was it made, did the outside number of that call was made to have a name attached?
Hold on. I got the phone calls.
So that was the black.
Well, please don't describe what's in it. Can you just tell us what?
It was the photo.
Okay. And is that a photograph of part of your excavation?
Yes.
With your team?
I just want to see what I missed before I play the phone call.
It is.
And is it Exhibit 24 to be entered into evidence?
And there's no objection, Judge.
Exhibit 24 will be admitted.
Can you describe what you see on State's Exhibit 24?
That was the part of that black plastic that we initially saw. That was what I got, as close as I could inside this burial. And with my hands, I uncovered that dirt that you can see in this photo. And that was what I was scraping off around that oval shape that just felt like a skull. And that was the plastic black bag that was tightly, up against whatever object was inside.
Okay.
And then I took that razor blade, and in order to even cut through it, I had to pull that plastic bag off of whatever was inside to make a cut. And then obviously I tried to make my cut as gentle as I could, not to disturb any forensic evidence. And then once I made the cut through the black plastic bag, a white plastic bag was underneath. And the white plastic bag, appeared to me to be a possible white garbage bag with diamond-shaped texture to it.
Okay. And what did you do once you found that?
So when then on the diamond, or on the white plastic bag underneath, I pulled that one up, and I made a similar cut with the razor blade. And then as I cut through the white plastic, that's when the, possible human hair started coming out onto my hands, and that was the point where we determined this is human remains.
Okay. And what did you do after that?
And then after that, the rest of the team continued the excavation of the grave. And then eventually we uncovered the entire body that was wrapped in this black plastic bag with a lot of duct tape, intermingled.
Okay. Once that was, did you remove that black plastic bag and its contents from the ground?
Yeah, once the complete excavation was done, where you could see the human remains wrapped in the black plastic, and we can take photographs and scans, the coroner was called in, and a body bag was placed, and then the team removed the body, which was given to the coroner.
Okay. All right. I'd like to call your attention to the area that you've described as the pet cemetery. Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibit 25 be shown to the defense and handed to the witness.
So I should have watched more of this, earlier.
Exhibit 25 is being shown to the witness.
Agent, do you recognize State's Exhibit 25?
I do.
What is it?
It's a photograph that our photographer took.
Okay, and that was, is that incorporated in your report?
It is.
And is that a true and accurate representation of what you observed in the area you've called the pet cemetery?
It is.
Alright,
Your Honor,
let's
State would
fast
ask
forward
that
this in a
move
second.
for Exhibit 25 to be entered into evidence.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 25 will be admitted.
Can you describe for the court what you see in State's Exhibit 25?
This is kind of the overall photo of what came to be known for us as the pet cemetery. And in this photo, you can see that statue of this mass out of burial site 2. It fell apart. So what ends up happening is just a removal of pieces into the coroner's body bag. And then once we get the pieces into the body bag,
Okay,
our anthropologist
not interested in what he's talking about at this point.
The fire pit we could see from satellite imagery.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you whether the cemetery and the fire pit are in the same location.
We don't know where the cemetery is located at this point. We're not boots on the ground. We had one text message in particular, that already allowed us to establish some priority areas of interest on the property.
Okay. Your Honor, I would ask...
So who did the text messages come from that allowed them to establish some priority areas on the ground to dig at?
the state could have
with the Eastern.
Is Steve, Mr. Daniels, does he have a title, Mr. Wood?
Okay, let's get into the phone call because it's getting too long. I gotta break this down. Way too long.
We'll be back on the record in State versus Daybell. The court took a brief recess to cool the courtroom down, the air conditioner, as well as to allow Mr. Wood some time to get his technology ready. Mr. Wood, do you wish to proceed with publishing Exhibit 19?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may do so.
This is a recording on December 8th at 3:43 p.m. And I am calling Chad Daybell's phone number, and hopefully I will be talking to both of them, Chad and Lori.
Okay, December 8th. I thought it was June 8th. Okay. We're gonna do this in the second video when it quiet down. Alright. So we just cut this second video. We'll see you in the second video.